Today's guest is bringing serious momentum to Alberta's tech community. Philippe Burns, recently named one of Calgary's top innovators in Avenue Magazine's Innovators of 2025, is the driving force behind Tech Thursday, an event series that's reshaping how Canada's innovators connect and collaborate. His positive energy and commitment to real community building stand out in a noisy world. Sit back, settle in. Welcome to Shift. Well, hello, everybody. Today, my guest is Philippe Burns, the co-founder of Tech Thursday, a grassroots event series that has become a cornerstone of Canada's innovation community. Philippe, how are you doing today?
Doing very well. John, thank you so much for having me.
You know, it's great to put a face to the name because I've been reading Tech Thursday, you know, the newsletter that you guys put out for a while. You know, and I know that we've been involved as well with some of the events, particularly the one around productivity. So it's really cool to meet you finally.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's great to meet you too. I love what you guys are doing, and yeah, love the podcast as well.
Right on. So Tech Thursday has clearly struck a chord. 175 events, more than 20,000 attendees since launching. But I want to go back a bit. When you first started Tech Thursday, what was the gap you and the team were trying to fill? And why is it so important to build a space like that, specifically, you know, in Alberta for our tech leaders?
Yeah, you know, the origin story of Tech Thursday is kind of interesting. So you know, I had started, you know, previous to sort of running Tech Thursday full time, I was at Neo Financial. And I joined there about a year after joining. I sort of shifted focus to standing up a team called the talent marketing team. So effectively, we had raised our Series C. We had about 300 employees, and we wanted to scale to about 800 within the course of like 12 months or something, you know, sort of ridiculous for a company. And so it was really sort of our team's mandate was to build our employer brand, get more people to want to work for us. And so we built out a whole sort of employer brand strategy, and events was a big part of that strategy. And so we had been going to a lot of events, and we found there were a lot of sort of, career fairs. There were maybe also a lot of pitch days or demo days, but there weren't a lot of, you know, events that really targeted senior members of the tech community. And so that's really the impetus for us to start Tech Thursday was, actually, we kind of want to hire these folks. And so let's build sort of but we know no one's going to want to come to a Neo recruitment event every week. So let's build something that's really community focused, that gets people out, that you know, allows for the space to be created for senior members of the tech community to learn about things relevant to what they're working on at work. And so that's really why we started Tech Thursday, which is sort of interesting roots. And then so we started it in Winnipeg and then expanded it to Calgary nearly 2 years ago now. And at a certain point last year, we, you know, we're no longer really hiring at scale at Neo, but Tech Thursday was revenue positive because of some of the sponsors we were able to bring on. And so we spun out Tech Thursday into its own company July of last year. And so now I've been running it full time, which has been a lot of fun. So
wow.
Yeah, a long way of answering your question of like kind of how we identified the gap and how we were able to kind of spin out into its own company.
Well, that's really cool. So a spin out of Neo Financial. Now, is your background HR and marketing communications?
No, I'll say like I had worked with the founders at Neo Financial previously at Skip the Dishes. And so I had just kind of a lot of experience working with them and understanding how they work. And so they kind of put me in to solve this talent marketing issue.
Wow. So then they obviously identified a strength you have and said, hey, let's give this a whirl. And off you go. So that's cool. Yeah. You know, and you just, I want to keep this Tech Thursday focused, but just real quick for those people that don't know, Neo Financial is run by, is it a couple of guys that started Skip the Dishes, or is it one guy in particular?
Yeah, totally. So it's run by there's I think now they've sort of added a co-founder recently, but so now I think that makes their sort of list of co-founders up to 5. 3 of them though were co-founders of Skip the Dishes as well. So Jeff Adamson, Andrew Chow, and Chris Amer, all on sort of the founding team at Skip.
It's just cool, when you think about it, like a made in Canada success, from Skip the Dishes to Neo Financial, now Tech Thursdays. Again, what I started my question off with, 175 events, 20K plus attendees. Like you guys, you're knocking it out of the park, and that's really cool. So congratulations. And I think having that, in the ecosystem is a really valuable resource. So, in the province, we talk a lot about building, a world-class tech ecosystem in the province. From what you've seen since, a couple of summers back in June 2023, what does it take to create a community, not just buzz, in a place like Alberta?
Yeah, totally. Well, I think a big part of it is the more and more I've sort of looked and studied ecosystems around the world, the more and more I do think it is about building, one like large successful tech company that sort of will spin out and have its offshoots. I mean, you sort of see like, it's sort of unfortunate for Winnipeg. I'm from Winnipeg, and you saw Skip the Dishes have a lot of success there, and they kind of weren't able to retain that talent. But what happened was very similarly, you have, these incredible entrepreneurs who have then came to Calgary and started numerous companies that sort of you can sort of draw back to the Skip the Dishes success of Neo Financial, which somewhat sort of Harvest, which sort of started Propra,
right,
OneVest, Second Shop, Walnut. And there's a whole ecosystem there of companies that I think are on a really fascinating trajectory. And I think we're going to see something very similar happen when maybe there's a liquidity event that takes place at Neo or something. Like I do think communities become thriving tech hubs when you have one fairly successful winner that is able to spin off a bunch of others. You saw it in PayPal, you saw it in LinkedIn. Tremendous example. Like all of a sudden, there's like 40 new tech companies that have a lot of success coming from it. So, I think we'll see what takes place after Neo. But in terms of like your question around specifically building tech community, for us, I think it was really important to create a really casual environment. When we sort of did some research into Silicon Valley and its roots in sort of the 60s and what led to sort of its sort of evolution into a tech hub, you really saw, of course, there's a lot written about a high concentration of capital, along with a high concentration of companies, and that sort of creating. But you also saw like, it shouldn't be overlooked the role that executives from these semiconductor companies meeting at pubs and talking about what they're building and what they're discussing, and having sort of a very casual environment to just discuss with your peers of what they're working on, what they're building, and what that can be. And so for us at Tech Thursday, we really want to fill that gap of, let's create a space for these casual tech executives to meet, to chat, to talk about what's happening, to talk about what's going on in their city, and to use that as sort of, a part of the flywheel in this ecosystem to create something really meaningful here.
Right. That's good. It reminds me of an expression a colleague of mine said once: success is a magnet. So you get that, you get someone who's, got a fairly successful company, and the spin-outs, and that attracts other people, whether that's capital or, other entrepreneurs and executives to come in and, hey, what's going on there? And when we look at what you guys are doing with your trajectory with Tech Thursday, so you started in Winnipeg, came to Calgary 3 years ago, and now you guys are coming to Edmonton. And Alberta Innovates is a proud sponsor of the work you guys are doing. So What's that going to look like? What makes Alberta right for this kind of growth, and what kind of momentum are you seeing on the ground that brings you north now?
Yeah, totally. That's a great question. Um, I think Edmonton is sort of an awesome example of a thriving tech ecosystem. And in fact, like you have now Edmonton Unlimited that I think is doing a great job of bringing the tech community together. Um, and you have Amy as well, and API, a lot of awesome groups there. And in fact, a lot of really great tech companies there too. Um, but I think is lacking in terms of programming and at least like consistent programming taking place there. And particularly, in terms of the programming that Tech Thursday provides. We've partnered with Ken Batista there in Edmonton, who I feel like if you're in the tech ecosystem, you've heard of Ken Batista
Yep, right.
in Edmonton. So we're really looking forward to having him sort of be the community lead, if you will, along with the steering committee made up of folks at Amy and API and Edmonton Unlimited to sort of bring together speakers and panelists and topics. I think our events are kind of going to hop around a little bit. Likely they'll be at Edmonton Unlimited for the most part, and then they'll sort of shift over to being at Amy and sort of in between the two, depending on the topic and who's sort of running those events. I think Edmonton presents like a really great sort of not necessarily nascent, but sort of like certainly like mid-sized tech community. And so I think that's like the perfect spot for Tech Thursday to come in, support the growth of that ecosystem. I'll say the other thing that we want to do with these expansions is not only build really strong local tech communities, but we also want to begin to break down the barriers between these traditionally insular tech communities across Canada. And so you have, in Canada, we see very little sort of communication between, we've been running this in Winnipeg and Calgary. Very few folks play between those two communities. But then you look to Calgary and Edmonton as well as like, oh, there should be a lot more interconnectedness between the cities in this province. But there really isn't, right? There are very few folks who know what sort of companies or what sort of talent is in Edmonton and the like. And so we're also launching Ottawa this week will be our first event in Ottawa. And so our big focus is, as we're adding more cities, how do we also connect investors, founders, maybe their first engineering hire between these cities as well, so we can build a stronger Canadian-wide tech hub as well, and not just sort of within these cities too.
Oh, I love that. That makes me glow when I hear that, because, when I think about Inventures, a lot of the work that we would do is how do we build bridges with people outside, within Alberta, for sure, within like the regional innovation networks that Alberta Innovates funds, between the two big cities. And there's a little bit of that going on, to your point, but that can always be better. But then how do we start working with organizations like Tech Access Canada, who are running 60 plus, tech centers across the country? How do we work with, these entrepreneurs and these other organizations outside of Alberta, to start really building that tech economy in the country? So that's cool. It's great to hear that there's like allied forces, so to speak, and how do we work together to break those walls down and really start to increase that?
Well, I think that's why we've seen a lot of these tech communities see what Tech Thursday is doing and say, oh, that would be great. Like now that we've sort of announced Ottawa and Edmonton, we've gotten some great traction for, I think, the next sort of cities on our roadmap are Montreal, Waterloo, and Toronto. And you've seen increasing traction on even after we just press release on Thursday, our sort of expansion, because it is sort of tech community with that national scope that I think people are really attracted by. This could really sort of be a game changer in terms of our ecosystem. So that's been really cool to see. The other thing as well is, we got a lot of follow-on effect from doing an event in San Francisco last year in October. We participated in San Francisco Tech Week.
Okay.
And even from that, we met the guy who's going to run our events in Ottawa, which was great. But we also met the consul generate, the Canadian consulate in Palo Alto, the folks who sort of run the programming there. And they brought up, they decided to do an event with us where they brought up 2 venture capitalists from San Francisco to Calgary to do an event in January. And so, I mean, and we also, on top of that, we had 3 speakers participate. One of them actually just sold their company to Wealthsimple, which is super cool. But the other one, FJ Yang, has now came up to speak at the University of Calgary, which we were able to facilitate. And I just saw that he's speaking later this month in May to Platform Calgary. And he might also be speaking at House 831 for those who are familiar with that space. But so, just from that one simple event, so much follow-on effect of just like getting out there, building community elsewhere, is able to just have so much follow-on effect. So we're also really excited, like, of course, the national launch, but you might fault me for being a founder with crazy visions, but I'm really looking forward to
man. I love it.
Tech Thursday London, Tech Thursday Medellin,
Sure.
and just like what that means for just building a much larger network for that.
Oh, totally. No, I think that's great. Having aspirations like that is, I think that's the way to go for sure. So now let's bring it back a little more locally with a more national vision, if that, I don't know if that even makes sense. But, when we think about Inventures, the event that's running here in May, that's, I believe this is year 8 for Inventures, and Tech Thursday, both offering something rare in the space. And that's in-person connection, the opportunity for deep conversations and a focus on quality over just hype. Where you can actually sit down and have these deep discussions with like-minded individuals. Why are events like these essential? Not just for networking, but for actually moving the needle on innovation in business?
Yeah, totally. Well, I think the space for informal, like the opportunity for informal meetings and also I think if you can be inspired by a topic and maybe that sort of sparks an idea for you, you get energized, you get enthusiastic about something that you just learned about and decide to do a deep dive. I think that's we shouldn't overlook the power that has in sort of innovation, but then the opportunity to meet folks who are somewhat involved in that topic or just casual meetings and what that can provide, I think is incredible. And I think what Inventures is doing that's really special is, flying in, being this huge center of gravity for Calgary is awesome. Having some incredibly smart folks in the room who are going to be speaking on the panel, I think that's it's going to be great. And I think also will become, as sort of a regular touchstone in our community. I think will become a huge part of our flywheel of, okay, let's bring folks together, continuously elevate sort of our shared knowledge and what we're thinking. And I think that's also, I think the other thing that Inventures is doing really well is they've done a great job of tapping all sorts of different community organizers to be a part of Inventures. And I think that's awesome. So often you see conferences sort of land in a new city and maybe which is not the case that Inventures is new to Calgary, but they'll land in a city and sort of say hey, we're here, this is what we're doing. And it's so rinse and repeat. And, it's kind of obvious how they're kind of executing their sort of business model or whatever it may be. And
Right.
Inventures has done a great job of creating space for the tech community. And I think what it means is this has sort of become the preeminent Calgary tech community conference that everyone sort of feels a part of and is able to contribute to. So that's been a really cool part of
Right.
being involved in ventures and also seeing what they've built for this year.
Yeah, and let me just expand on that because I know you'd mentioned it's a great opportunity for Calgary. Inventures is like provincial, so it's we'll have the regional innovation networks participating there. The business people from Edmonton and innovators from Edmonton are coming up as well. So it takes place in Calgary, as you know, but it's that magnet for the whole province, and I've always thought of it as a celebration of Alberta innovation and an opportunity for us to shine a light and build bridges for the province to, within the province and then outside, some of the things you're talking about with Tech Thursday. I just have to say before I forget, I'm going to rip an expression off you. You've mentioned it a couple of times. You say the flywheel. And I really like that. I've used magnet, shining a light on. Flywheel is now going to be one that I use often. So I hope I don't have to pay you 25 cents every time I say that.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, you'll owe the royalties to the Neo guys. That's really what it is.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. Everyone's going to be listening to Shift now, so they can catch me saying flywheel.
Yeah, that's right. And the whole idea is like you can have, however many pieces of the flywheel you have. Each one feeds into the next, and as each one starts to grow and become larger, it accelerates the flywheel, right? And so each one feeding into the next gets faster and faster, and that's how you have exceptional growth is by feeding each part of the flywheel, and all of a sudden you can't how fast it's going.
I like it. Yeah, consider that ripped off now. I'm using that expression all the time.
You're welcome to use it.
So when you think about Alberta being serious about leading in tech and innovation, and when we say, we want to be tech and innovation leaders, I think we've got aspirations, much like you talked about earlier, where you want to have Tech Thursday, London, and all that. Alberta wants to be a leading innovation jurisdiction globally. We want to be seriously perceived as, this area that contributes fantastically to a Canadian economy, but that also helps Canada push, innovation-wise. We need more than just funding. That's obviously a huge part, but we need people to show up for these things. So talk to me a little bit about that. What does that mean? Like, when you've got Tech Thursday events, when you've got the events that Platform Calgary's hosting, the regional innovation networks, the Edmonton Unlimiteds, the Inventures, what does it mean to get out and participate in these things so we can start to really hit our aspirations?
Yeah, totally. John, I love all this talk that you've mentioned a few times of like what's hype versus not, or like how do we build a really serious tech ecosystem where we're sort of like are we just building a tech community for fun, or are we really trying to build an industry, right? And I think that's often overlooked or forgotten a bit of amongst like this is one of the hardest industries in the world to build a company in, but also the largest companies in the world right now are tech companies, right? So if we want to build really meaningful companies in this space, we got to hustle and we have to like build really exceptional companies. And so my answer to your question might actually be kind of contrarian in the sense that like I think if you're a founder, you should be really careful with protecting your time and only show up to the events that you think are going to benefit your company, and hold the organizers to like a high bar and a high standard of whether or not this is meaningful for you or not. And if it's not, don't show up. And I think that's like for us, we actually started our company. So when we spun out Tech Thursday, we actually decided to spin it out as a for-profit company, which is not necessarily what you see that often in terms of like ecosystem supports. And the reason we did was because we had always had to hold a high bar operating under like a venture-backed company, where we always had to hold a high bar of, are these, returning, do they have a return on investment for Neo? And if they do, okay, continue doing them. If not, you got to kill them. And very similar now, we want to hold ourselves to that similar bar of, we have to be motivated by whether or not we're supporting our audience, we're supporting our sponsors, and like, are we creating value for the people who are coming, who are sponsoring us, who are speaking at our events? And if not, we should be struggling to make ends meet. And so for us, we really have to like understand what is the value that we're creating for entrepreneurs, for founders, for our audience, and really hit that consistently. Otherwise, we have to reshape and come back to the drawing board and say, okay, what is the value that we're creating? Let's make sure that we're reassessing that and doubling down and otherwise not focusing on it. So I think like your question is, totally, the founders need to show up. They need to like, there's a lot of great events where founders can learn. For Tech Thursday, what we're trying to do is bridge the knowledge gap of how do we get more folks to understand what it takes to build these like really meaningful companies. And there are a lot of other great events who do that, who put on amazing programming, and focus on how do we build meaningful companies? How do we create how do we have a step change in this ecosystem to like get us to that next spot? Mm-hmm. So I think for founders, it's like, yes, you should be coming out and networking, but also you should be hustling and building your company. And so if you do show up to an event, like hold them to a high standard of like, am I getting value? Am I not? And what does value look like for me at this point of building my company? And so, yeah, I think also like Platform does an awesome job too. It's just a matter of like taking a serious look at like, what is the return of even like my time investment in going to these events, and understanding that.
Phil, that's a great answer. Because there are a lot, I think in Alberta, there's a lot of support, there's a lot of events, and people, I think, want to go to all of them, or like, how do I go? I can't go to all of them. And that message of being judicious as you look at what's going to give you the best return on your investment. And now my next comment might sound flippant, but I'm quite serious, and I don't mean it to be flippant, but when you go to events, fill out the surveys, fill out the post-event surveys, and let people know when they're organizing events that, yeah, you missed the mark, or man, you hit it bang on. Give us help in understanding what the community wants. We're always, and when I say I'm kind of speaking about, the ecosystem. We need to have feedback from founders, and researchers and, new entrepreneurs. Like, what do you need? We have a pretty good sense, but things, are always changing. Maybe something pops up that people want more information on. And, we want to help provide valuable value-add content. So I think your answer is fantastic. Just thought I'd supplement it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I'll maybe just add quickly. Tech Thursday doesn't do post-event service, though we maybe should, but we do love any.
You do now.
Yeah, we do now. That's right. Well, our post-event survey is like, just reach out to me on LinkedIn and just like be totally brutally honest with what you thought, because we always love feedback from our audience. So.
Okay, so you're telling people then when they go to a Tech Thursday event, whether they're impressed or disappointed or whatever, just reach out to you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, exactly. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, and or even if you like, hey, my buddy's in town, this is what he does. He's in town this day, can we put him on a Tech Thursday? Or hey, I'm working with this new tool, can we have a Tech Thursday on that? Any sort of feedback on topics or speakers, I'd love to hear it. So just send that all my way.
Yeah. Boots on the ground. That's great. So now, Philip, let's wrap this up because I don't want to take all your morning because you were talking about hustling, and I know you probably got to get out there and do that. But and you alluded to this already when we were talking about aspirations, but I have to ask it anyways. What's next for you in Tech Thursdays?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we've sort of said, we're launching Ottawa and Edmonton. And so those are launching this week, May 1st in I'm not sure when this episode will come out, but May 1st in Ottawa, May 8th in Edmonton. So that's sort of like a rolling start here for kind of a national expansion over the next 2 weeks. So we're looking forward to seeing how that goes. We're also hosting an event in partnership with FinTechs Canada and Xero at Toronto Tech Week. So that will be exciting to see. Firstly, I think that event will be that whole week will be really cool. It's sort of a replacement of Collisions. Will be awesome. But I think a first foray into Toronto. I'm really looking forward to seeing what our reception in that market is. So certainly, I think to us, it's actually really about the Thursday events. We want to build and grow our audience there. I think our next focus is actually this sort of I might only simply allude to it, John, of
Sure.
We want to be in more markets. We want to be in possibly Toronto, Montreal, Waterloo, in the next 12 months. Our next focus is more on the Thursday media side. We're sort of calling it of hey, if we can build this in-person audience and build this in-person infrastructure around events, are we able to also create videos from those events, create podcasts, maybe even stand up different shows as well. And if they get their own following, well, okay, you can do a roadshow now. You can go to Toronto to do your sort of launch party, and we have just that infrastructure and that in-person audience already baked in. And also, if we can translate sort of that following we have to our in-person events into an online forum, I think that's dramatically more scalable and possibly more sustainable than our in-person events. So that's kind of how we're thinking about the two sort of parts of our business is Thursday events and Thursday media. And right now, Thursday media is our newsletters, as well as posting to YouTube. We're so far, I think only 12 people have watched our videos. Or something like that. I think it's actually 10,000 people have watched our shorts over the last month, but
Right.
Our long-form content, I'm sure
Still building an audience for it.
Still building an audience for it too, for sure. Yeah. But we've also probably not focused our resources enough on how do we actually build that out and actually how do we get people to actually engage in this audience or in this content. So that's going to be our focus going forward as we sort of launch some new cities and see, how do we engage this audience on sort of online outside of the scope of maybe the Thursday events themselves. So, but again,
right.
John, I'm going to bring it up again. That's the flywheel of you have this in-person audience that you're creating, and the easiest low lift thing to do next is engage them online, and hopefully by engaging them online, they're also feeding back into the in-person events. And to me, I see that as the flywheel of our business. Right. So doing those two things and then this is going to age this episode, but it's not about I actually have to go vote is what I got to do. It's election
That's
day.
Right. It's voting day. Yes.
It's voting day. So right. I got to go vote.
Yep. Yeah, me too. Philip, this was a real pleasure chatting with you. And I got to tell you got great enthusiasm and energy that's infectious. So now I'm all don't even need the coffee. I'm yeah, let's do it. I hope that I get the chance to cross paths with you at Inventures this year. I know you're a busy guy, so you're going to be in and around, and hope we get the chance. If not, best of luck. We'll talk in the future at some point, and I'm going to keep, checking out the newsletter and attending the events when I can. And your Thursdays are going to get so busy. You guys are going to have to start tech Saturday mid-afternoons, tech Sunday mornings.
Yeah.
Excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, that's awesome. And John, well, you'll probably be hearing from me. We'll have you up at Edmonton, maybe moderating some panels, or you can do a live launch of
I'd love to help.
Shift or live recording. Would be awesome.
I'm there, man. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for your time, Phil. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. Shift can be found on any of the streaming services. Until next time.